Okay, so every couple that wants to be in a long-term relationship has different aspects that they need to maintain. So I want you to answer each question that I ask you, only if you're comfortable. So my first question for you is, in a long-term relationship, how much sexual contact each day, week, month, if any, is ideal to you? And what kind of sexual contact is ideal to you?
Um, well, my number one love language is physical touch. So I would say, as far as like physical contact, like I guess kissing, hugging, like on the daily, that sort of thing occurs. I would prefer that occur pretty often. I would say as far as like sexual contact, maybe like probably like a couple times a month, but I think it also depends on the stage of a relationship. Like if it's a new relationship, probably not. But if it's like, you're a couple years down the line, like they say, a little more often is probably what's desired. So, but I've
Mhm.
never been in that situation. So,
So if you feel like you're not receiving like that minimum of contact with a partner, how do you feel and how do you respond to that?
um, well, like I said, since physical touch is my number one love language, I feel like it can lead to issues of like second guessing either myself or the relationship. And like, do they actually care about me? Do they actually want me? Do they actually like love me? Like, I think it just makes things a little more complicated because I feel like physical contact and sexual contact is like that way of showing somebody that you care about them, but not like verbally saying it all the time.
Hmm.
So I guess not receiving that minimum, um, yeah, would just kind of cause issues in that way.
And do you think that would be something that you kind of like bring up, or is that just kind of like a make or break deal for you? Like if you aren't receiving that minimum, like would you discuss it with your partner, or how would you go about like really doing that?
I would definitely discuss it with my partner. Yeah.
You wouldn't just be
And
like,
not
it
in,
wouldn't be
I
like
think
a
it's, you have to be
deal
careful how you go
breaker.
about it, not in like a way of, no. I mean, if we discussed it and it didn't change, maybe, yeah.
Hmm.
But like
So
if I discussed it with them and, able to work with it.
yeah. So, in every part of a long-term relationship, of course, the question always comes up about marriage and kids and the future steps. So, in a long-term relationship, do you want to have kids? And if so, how many and how soon?
I do want to have kids. I want like 4 or 5 kids actually. Um, how soon? That's an interesting question for somebody like me because ideally, I'd love to start having kids before I'm out of my 20s, but at the same time, with the career that I'm trying to pursue, um, I'm not sure how the timing is going to work out both with my career and having a family. So, because there's a possibility of me being on the road a lot, and it's kind of hard to have a family and especially as many kids as I want while out on the road. But I would say, like, ideally, considering I want 4 or 5 kids, start having kids by like 28, 29, 30, around there.
And so, there's a lot of people that can't have children naturally, or, they get a little bit too old to naturally have kids. In your personal opinion, if we can't have kids naturally, do you believe other methods are acceptable, such as adoption?
Yeah, totally. I personally would love to have like 2 or 3 of my own and then adopt a couple. I think adoption's a great way. I also think fostering is really awesome because, then you get to help a bunch of children's lives and sometimes fostering can lead to adoption, which is really nice. So, yeah, no, I think those methods are totally acceptable and that would definitely not be a turn off for me.
Mhm. So, in a long-term relationship, obviously, kids are really expensive. Being in a long-term relationship with a partner is really expensive. So, at least right now, how well do you think you manage your finances and your money?
Um, no. Not very. I don't have any debt. Like I'm in good standing. However, if I I think if I was to completely be on my own right now, I would not be able to entirely support myself. I'm in college, so I'm grateful that a lot I'm being sort of still financially supported by my dad, but um yeah, no, I'm definitely a spender. So I have to work on that for a future relationship, that's for sure.
Hmm. And so, when you eventually do get in a long-term relationship, do you like to be the one in control of the finances, or do you kind of want the partner to be in control of that? Like, how would you divvy that up?
I think it's very mutual. I do believe in in a long-term relationship where you get married, I believe in like the joint bank accounts and the joint finances sort of thing. And I think both partners should have access to it and to be in charge. However, I always think it's a good balance when you do have a partner who is more of a spender to have somebody that's more of a saver that can kind of have a level head on their shoulders and can kind of be like, hey, we don't really need that.
Hmm.
We're not going to buy that sort of thing. And sometimes I need to be told that. So, as much
Yeah.
as I would like to be in control of them, I'm not sure that would be the smartest idea.
Yeah, and all of these are like hypotheticals of, when we're older and we are in long-term relationships. Speaking of even longer term, how do you feel about retirement savings or emergency savings? And what are you willing to sacrifice to save for each of those?
Um, that's crazy to think about, but I think they're very important, and I'm very pro for saving for emergency and retirement savings. What do I be willing to sacrifice? I mean, I think it's just it sounds really simple, but like every penny counts. And so I think it's just getting better about like little things that I just don't need, just
Hmm.
not wasting money on them. I'm I buy a lot of things at the store that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna eat this, and then I don't. And so yeah, things like that. Maybe some forms of entertainment, lighten up on that a bit, eating
Hmm.
out, stuff like that.
All right, so I kind of want to take a little bit of a 180, but it's not too far off of what we've been talking about. It still has to do with long-term relationships. What are your thoughts on monogamy and polyamory? And if you kind of need me to go a little bit more in depth on those, I can. But um, what are your general thoughts on those two subjects?
Um, Monogamy is when there's one partner, right?
Yes, there's
Yeah.
one partner. Polyamory can be like there's one primary, and then there's like a few others, like just anything with
Yeah.
like one, like more than one partner.
Got you. I definitely personally prefer and believe in having only one partner. I think it can help with issues such as jealousy and um, you know, physical things, I guess, kind of like we were talking about earlier, like humans get jealous and it's a natural thing. I feel like it happens to a lot of us. And so I feel like, your time being split, your physical connections being split, things like that with more than one person can prevent the relationship from being as deep as, it could be. And I'm also a believer that a lot of like whoever you marry should be your best friend. And so like to me, it's only like, oh, there's only one right person.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So outside the subject of just polyamory, like if you found out that your long-term partner was engaging in sexual contact outside of the primary relationship, how would you kind of respond to that? Or how would you respond to if your long-term partner came up to you and wanted to discuss moving into a polyamorous relationship?
Um, if they wanted to discuss it, um, or if they really wanted to, I'd be out. And if I found out that they were having any contact outside of the relationship, sorry, I
Yeah.
can't do it. You're gone.
No, no, and that's
Yeah.
completely okay. A lot of people have that same mindset, but do you think that maybe the way you were raised and like your religion and like just your core family values, and just for reference, I have very similar views, raised as a Christian, and I'm trying to open my mind more up to those subjects. But do you think Christianity, the values that your parents taught you, like from a young age, definitely had an influence on those, views?
100%. My parents think very similarly. I grew up in the Methodist church, and that's just it's kind of what I was taught. I mean, I had the Ten Commandments kind of drilled into me when I was in elementary school, and ever since then. And one of them is, I think it's the Seventh Amendment, like don't commit adultery, and all those like that. And so, yeah, 100%, I'd say not just my family, but yeah, my religion has played a big part in how I view relationships and what I look for and how I handle things like that.
And also, another big thing is like the city and environment we grew up in. Just for reference, we grew up in the same city of Frisco for all of high school. I mean, at least before I moved to Frisco, I was still part of a suburban community that was very traditional in their values. So, do you think maybe if you grew up in like a city where like you were exposed to a lot more different views and a lot more political opinions, that your view might be a little bit different? Like, do you really think that the environment you grew up in really affects those views as well?
Um, yeah, that's an interesting question because I feel like that's something that I'm kind of discovering since moving out of what they call the Frisco bubble. And now I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's still sort of a suburban. It's a little more city, but it's still sort of the same lifestyle. But I have been exposed to a lot of different, families and um, just groups of people in general. And I have realized that like we grew up in sort of a bubble, and you and I grew up in the sorts of neighborhoods where it felt like every house was the same, every household was the same. It was a mom and a dad, and it was this, and like this is how it worked, and like you get that. And so yeah, I mean, when you grow up seeing that all your life, and that's how people talk about things, and that's the way that people go about their lives, like it becomes like, oh, it's a no-brainer. Like, I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna be that. And so yeah, not having very diverse um like communities, or like we never went to school with a bunch of people from diverse communities. And so um yeah, I feel like that definitely plays a part in it.
hmm so moving on, um, how do you feel about couples counseling?
I think it's great. I really do. I go to counseling on a personal level, just me. I think, couples counseling is important because a lot of people don't know how to healthily express um, things that they are feeling in a relationship, or how to work out problems healthily with their partner. And so having a counselor kind of acts as that barrier and that like kind of moderator between the two of them. And I think marriage counseling, couples counseling is even really good when you're not necessarily having what you would consider issues, and just going just because. And
hmm
take it as much as you need it, but like yeah, I think it's a very healthy thing.
So yeah, you kind of answered like one of my questions that I was going to ask. Like, even if like the relationship isn't having problems, like just doing like maybe a checkup every few times a year, do you think that's a good thing to do, even if there are no like outlying problems that are like very visible? Just doing like a little checkup every few months is a good idea.
Yeah, for sure.
hmm So, staying on the topic of long-term relationships, when you enter a marriage, I mean, obviously, like, you're not married yet, but you want to be someday. If you and your partner were getting married and your partner approached you and wanted to sign a prenuptial agreement, would you be okay with that? If you need me to elaborate a little bit more, I can, but would you be okay with if your partner brought that up to you? Would you want to bring that up to your partner? Like, what's that kind of dynamic there?
I would never feel the need to bring that up to my partner, I don't think. Um, in all honesty, I think if somebody brought that up to me, I would feel very sketch about the whole thing. Like, kind of like, okay, why? Like, I would almost feel like it would almost be hurtful because I'd feel like, oh, do you not trust me? Are you already planning on this going south? Because like I said earlier, I definitely believe in finances becoming joint when you get married. And you know, I would kind of feel like it would be a little suspicious. And I don't know if, I guess it depends on the kind of situation and the job they have and the job I have. And maybe I would be the one that would approach somebody with that. But I, I don't know. I guess if I was put in that situation, I would be hurt initially and maybe I'd feel out all the options, but I don't know. I wouldn't be super comfortable with it right off the bat.
Hmm. Would that be something that, you know, you would have a conversation about, or would it just be something that like you completely shut down immediately? Like, no, we're not doing that. Or would it be something that you're like a little bit more open to at least having a conversation about it with your partner?
I would definitely have a conversation about it. Yeah.
Hmm.